All right, then, everyone, welcome back to our 2014 MLB preview podcast. We're moving on to the AL Central. Stephen Edwards, a division in baseball that really has one runaway favourite.
Yeah, it's almost like it's them and the rest, because I don't think anyone else in this division can really get close to them. I think that, we'll talk about potentially almost like a Cinderella story, I think, is what you can maybe call them. We'll talk about them in a little while, but Detroit are the class in this division.
I agree with that. There could be a little bit of a scrap on, though, for the second spot, which could be fun and keep some fans entertained as well. So let's get straight into this. We're going to start with the Cleveland Indians, Stephen. They went 92-70 last year, made some moves. David Murphy comes in. I like the addition of John Axford, the closer. Nia Morgan has been brought in to lead off their lineup. Some decent additions from Cleveland, from a team that was so-so last year, but losing Jimenez, who was near unplayable in the second half of last year, is just a major loss.
Yeah, I mean, they lost Jimenez and Scott Kazmir as well, so that's two big guys that combined for a hell of a lot of innings for them. So it means there are question marks in that Cleveland Indians rotation. Obviously, they've got Justin Masterson, but for me, there is some serious question marks going into this season in that respect. And before we talk about that, I don't know if anyone realised this, but if anyone listens to Mike and Mike, they go to Cleveland every year because Mike Golick's family, I believe, are back based in Cleveland. So every year they go and see them. And for the last 3 years, Cleveland have jumped out of the gate pretty much in the American League Central and looked like they're off to a really good season. And then there's this funny thing that once the Mike and Mike show has been there on location, that the losing really does get in and thick and fast. I mean, the winning record before the Mike and Mike turn up, then a horrific losing record after they turn up. And they talked about this on the show last year. And yeah, I think it's going to get to a point eventually where the city of Cleveland are not going to have Mike and Mike there at all during baseball season, because it seems they put a hex on this team. I mean, it bounced back after the Mike and Mike eventually and got back into the American League Central race, but not enough to obviously take down the Tigers. But I tell you, for me, this Cleveland Indians team as a whole, as I say, we talked about it a few moments ago. You actually kind of had a bit of soft spot for, because it's the city of Cleveland for a start. They were on the lovable losers in the film Major League as well until they got successful. So always kind of a bit of a team you kind of look for and you hope they do well. But they have got, for me, one of the guys that is kind of like one of the best kept secrets in baseball. But it'll be interesting to see if he can actually fill a new position this year. And that's Carlos Santana, who I thought hit incredibly well as a catcher last season, but he's moved to third base this year.
Which I like, by the way. I like moving him to third base. Means he's going to play every day without the labour of having to catch. This stat is striking to me, right? So Cleveland last year finished a game behind the Tigers. Bit of a Cinderella story, like you said. Finally successful ball club in Cleveland. But they were pretty much teams that just beat down on poor teams in and around the country, because they were 13 games below 500 when they played against teams with a winning record. So they were not competitive against big teams. They were flat-track bullies, and I do worry about that lineup. And one thing that does stand out to me, I've got two rules with my pitching rotation. I don't want everyone to be a righty, and I don't want Justin Masterson to be the ace. Now, I really like Justin Masterson, don't get me wrong, but he's very inconsistent and still has real issues with control. And you sort of want to surehand know what you're going to get with your ace guy, and I don't think that's what he is right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. If you're going to try and compete against the Tigers in this division, you need an ace and a true ace. I mean, the Tigers are blessed. We'll talk about it a bit later. I mean, two aces almost. But the Indians really need like Masterson to be that ace if he can be. And if not, they need to go and get a guy who can help support Masterson and take over as being that number one guy. But yeah, so question marks. I have a feeling they're going to fall off of what they did last season.
Yeah, no doubt about it, in my opinion. Let's get to their keys for the season. My key for Cleveland is basically to figure out what you are early on. They need to evaluate very quickly what sort of team they are this year. Are they going to try and make a move for Jeff Samaja, who's readily available, and maybe commit to having him long term, and then they can pair him with Justin Masterson, bring in some lefties as well? Or are they a team that isn't really in a position to compete this year, so why not stockpile some talent for next year?
Yeah, I agree, and I think I think they're going to find out very, very quickly that this year they're not even going to finish second in this division. They're going to be around about a 500 team again. So Carlos Santana for me is going to be a big key. He's got to show that not only can he be the bat for them, that he can also field his new position, which is one of those things that we don't quite know just yet. And they're going to have to get some really, really good years out of some of their guys. Anything that isn't above where they should be, and they've got real problems because they're very shaky for me in lots of places in that lineup. The same for their pitching, and they could so easily drop low in their division if they were playing in another division, which they're not. Thankfully for them, because you could put them, let's say, maybe even a fourth place over the American League East, but because they're in a century, you're kind of talking to them about being a. For me, I've got them down as finishing third in this division, but they could so easily also finish second by default.
I agree with that. Also, big shout Yan Gomes. He's going to have a big year. That's the reason they can move Santana to third base, because he's going to be such a good catcher coming into that team. So big shout Yan Gomes. So I've got them finishing third in this division. You say you also have them finishing third. Yeah,
I've got them finishing third. And you already say, Yan Gomes. They needed to find a way to get him some at-bats. I mean, one of those things they did last season was Carlos Santana. He played catcher, he played first base, he played, not played, but he was a designated hitter for them as well to try and get Gomes in that lineup more and more. So they made a decision, but putting a guy on the hot corner, I'm not so sure about that. I think first base is one thing, and you really wanted Nick Swisher that badly in your lineup?
Great rule in life. Never really need Nick Swisher. Yeah?
I mean,
can we all agree to that now?
Yeah. I just kind of worry. I mean, I think the best thing that Nick Swisher's done over about the last few years is maybe appearing in an episode of How I Met Your Mother. But
no doubt.
Outside of that, I wouldn't necessarily take a situation where I'd put Carlos Santana at third base just because you want Nick Swisher in your lineup.
Do you think Swisher will suit up every day, or?
That's a bad pun. I think you're going to see a lot of messing around, but that could be a real problem for them. Because if they start thinking to themselves, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll take Swisher out of the lineup and move Santana to first base. If you're going to do that, you've got to move him permanently away from third base and put him to first base, say, look, the experiment didn't work. You can't mess around with Santana, because if you really want him to field that position on a day-to-day basis, he needs to feel comfortable fielding that position.
No doubt about it. Bad How I Met Your Mother pun there. And if you don't think that Nick Swisher is needed in anything, tweet us at UK First Take with the hashtag I don't need Nick Swisher. Maybe we'll get some t-shirts printed up with Nick Swisher's face. Hashtag I don't need Nick Swisher. Stephen, let's move to Chicago, to Chi-Town, and let's go to the White Sox part of the town. I look at this team, I look at this lineup, I think years away. I really do think years away. Don't get me wrong, we are both fascinated to see Jose Darrell Abreu, like everyone is. I mean, the bat speed and the natural power is freakish. Pure freakish. This isn't a rookie coming in at 23 who's going to blow people's minds. He's 27, played a lot of international baseball, and has just stunned scouts by how good he looks. So he's a real chance at being the home run king in the American League this year. They also bring in Adam Eaton via a trade, and they bring in Felipe Polino to be their second guy in their starting rotation. Issues across the board. I like Quintana, but man, Chris Sale, then a huge drop-off and a worrisome starting lineup.
This team mastered something last year. They mastered losing. It was just like, just when you think they couldn't lose any more games, they proved us wrong, and they managed to continue to lose. And I'll tell you something else. If this team comes to your ballpark, have that K sign ready to go up on the stands, because this team is going to rack up strikeouts. Adam Dunn is just going to he's a strikeout waiting to happen. Gordon Beckham could be another guy that could hit very little. Abreu, first year in the major leagues, I have a feeling that he's going to rack up some Ks as well. So I think they're going to hit some home runs, because that's what they need to do this season. I mean, last year the offense was pretty much putrid. They can't be as bad as that, but I have a feeling for every home run they hit, they're just going to strike out even more. So it's always going to be one of those things. You're going to have like solo home runs. So they're not going to score any more runs maybe than what they did last season. the pitching after Chris Sale is horrific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Chris Sale is just a very, very good starter. And if he can even improve on what he did last season, then I think it's going to be very, very good for him. But the rest of the rotation will look even worse.
A couple of questions on their starting rotation then, and then we're going to move on from the White Sox, because you don't deserve our time, White Sox. Number one, Chris Sale. Really weird throwing motion. I know he's got a deadly slider, but he's all lanky and arms and stuff, and I worry for his long-term health throwing that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he's that big lefty, isn't he, with that slider, and they sometimes do look a little bit ungainly the way they throw. But the trouble is, because they're so unorthodox at times, it really is a difficult pitch to hit. And I'm not sitting here saying that he's any Randy Johnson, but I remember what Randy Johnson was like. He was just a nightmare trying to hit against him. And Chris Sale's another guy that, if he has that presence and he pitches anything like he did last season, I think he'll pitch better this season as well. He's just become a very, very difficult guy to hit. Tall, lanky left-hander with a slider is probably one of the toughest pitchers to hit in baseball. One
of the most dangerous weapons, that's true.
Yeah.
Jose Quintana, they gave him a 5-year deal. I don't know where I'm at with that. Like, I understand it's what the market dictates, and they don't feel like they can use him. He's young. They really believe in him. I'm just having trouble coming to terms that he deserved a 5-year deal right now. Like, you couldn't have just got him on a keepsake weight deal, and a wink, wink. You best show us something. 5-year deal.
Yeah, I think they kind of hope they throw the money at him and then hope that he will repay them with a very good season. I mean, at the moment, I struggle to see where the number 2 star is coming from.
Yeah.
I really do. For me, you've got an ace and then 4 number 4 starters. Mm-hmm. They've got to have some guys that are going to step up. Now, whether that's Quintana, whether that's Paulino, but those guys have got to step up and be that number 2 starter, because otherwise it's going to be a case of the Chris Sale's going to have to perhaps go out there as almost be the losing streak stopper.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, my key to victory, or key to the season for them this year, is simply sit back, enjoy Jose Abreu. At least, first of all, hope that Jose Abreu pays off, and if he does, enjoy, because the rest of it, I'd turn away.
Yeah, I kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Just go and watch a ball game and Chris Sale's pitching and hope that Abreu's in the lineup at the same time.
That's what I do. If Chris Sale isn't pitching, turn off for the day. I've got them finishing 4th in the division, saved only by the Minnesota Twins. I'm sorry, Minnesota. They're going to be pretty bad. They won 63 games last year. I actually think they're going to be worse than that this year, and you could be looking at somewhere around the 60 mark. I think this is a really bad ball club. Where have you got them finishing in the division?
Yeah, I've got them finishing 4th because they'll lose, but they may not lose enough. Do I think they're going to break 100 losses? I don't think so. I think they're going to be kind of round about where they finished last season, maybe winning a few more games. But if they get to 70 wins, I think they've had a good season.
I agree with that. All right, let's get to the cream of the crop in the AL Central. It's the team that
time to talk Twins.
Time to talk some Minnesota Twins baseball. We're only joking, of course. It is the Detroit Tigers. They make big moves. The Ian Kinsler monster trade. Andrew Roman is in. Nick Castellanos. Am I saying that right, Castellanos? I think that's what I'm supposed to say. Someone told me that the other day, but I still think you're supposed to pronounce one of the L's. So they bring him in. Rajai Davis comes in as well. Joe Nathan, the closer, is a free agent, and they bring in some experience with Jobber Chamberlain. Jose Iglesias is out. That is a major, major problem. They've been literally trading for everyone who has a first name to try and come and play some shortstop. I don't know how it's going to work. And I also don't understand why they're at a position where they're so in on Iglesias already when they traded from last year that it's almost like destroyed the whole entire defense that he's missing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they let Johnny Peralta go. Mm-hmm. And obviously Peralta got done last year for Peds, and it was just one of those things. I think they didn't want him back.
That's fair enough.
And I think that's going to prove to be a very big loss for them. The first thing when I look at this lineup now for the Tigers, it doesn't strike fear in me anymore. I think to myself, once I get past Miguel Cabrera and to a point, Victor Martinez, it doesn't really scare me.
Agreed.
It's just some of the names are still there, but I just sit there and think, you know what, I'm just not that worried anymore. I mean, they've lost Prince Fielder as well. I mean, I think Alex Avila's has got to hit much better for them, and I think he's got to be able to give them that offense and give them another bat. Because otherwise, I think once you get down into the bottom half of that lineup, I think it becomes quite easy. I think one of the biggest things they've got to worry about is what they're going to do with Ian Kinsler when he goes back to Texas for a game. I think he's going to need protection.
Yeah.
I mean, the comments that he's come out with over the off-season, I mean, this guy is brain dead.
So pointless, so idiotic. They've also acquired Ian Kinsler's brain, which is no good for anyone. And when the brain is dead, that does not help in any way. But they do have the best 1-2 punch in the American League. They have Justin Verlander. They have Max Scherzer. Big questions around Max Scherzer right now. Let's do a hot sports take on this. Scherzer is wearing Yankee pinstripes next year. Turned down a big money deal. He says it wasn't value for him. And I'm inclined to say that. I just want to say this 1 second about players in baseball hitting the open market. What is the difference between a baseball player, seriously, because it's guaranteed money, between $20 million a year and like $80 million a year? It's not really a life-changing difference. So why not test the open market? And at worst, you're probably going to get $2 million less than the team offered you, and someone's going to pay huge money for Max Scherzer. He just won the Cy Young Award. I have doubts about whether he can repeat that sort of level again. I'm sure everyone does. But if he's somewhere near that, someone's going to pay him stupid money.
Yeah, someone will offer him stupid money. The Yankees will offer him stupid money. I mean, it could be interesting, isn't it? I mean, the Yankees, in theory, not to go back to the American League East, they could be having Scherzer and David Price in their rotation next year, and obviously then that rotation looks a lot better. But I think I can understand where Scherzer's coming from. I think the Tigers made him a fair offer, but I think he's going to test the open market. I mean, he's a part of that top 3 rotation for the Tigers, obviously with Justin Verlander, who didn't actually pitch like Justin Verlander last year. I mean, that's saying something. He's still dominant, but he could still pitch better. But he's a guy that could go out there on any given night and throw a perfect game or throw a no-hitter. That's how good Justin Verlander is. I think Scherzer this season drops off a bit. Mm-hmm. I think teams eventually start picking up on that big breaking curveball that he's got that just turned batters inside out last season. I don't think that's going to be as effective this season. I think players may learn, and teams may have scouted that a bit better. But I've got Anibal Sanchez as well as their number 3 guy, and I'm fine with that. Their top 3 in the rotation is great, and that's what I was saying earlier on. About the Rays. They may not have the 1-2 punch that the Tigers have, but they've got a much deeper rotation. I think once you get outside of that top 3, it becomes a little bit more shaky. And the bullpen last season for them, I think, was one of the big reasons why they didn't compete down the stretch, and they couldn't find that close. They brought in Joe Nathan this year. Joe Nathan's no spring chicken. He's a guy that can still throw hard, but you can also see maybe where things could potentially go wrong for them. For me, this is a team that's going to win this division, but they're not going to be as dominant as they were last season.
I couldn't agree more. Let's get to their keys for the season to try and be that dominant team then. I have 2. I think that a key question is what level will Scherzer be at? He's in a contract year, so he's got motivation to play. Reigning Cy Young winner. Can he get back to, 85% of that level, and still you'd be pretty damn happy with that? And then you get Verlander to pitch like Verlander, and then you're happy, and you got Anibal Sanchez as well. So that's a big question for them. And then also, just add another bat. Just try and find another productive batsman where you hit the nail on the head perfectly. Torrey Hunter's 38 years old. Victor Martinez is now the protection for Miguel Cabrera, not Prince Fielder. That is slightly worrisome. And then behind that, you got Austin Jackson, Avila Castellanos, who isn't proven, Don Kelly. Ramine cannot hit to save his life. They desperately need another bat, in my opinion.
Yeah, they do desperately need another bat, because for me, that lineup doesn't strike fear. And I think Miguel Cabrera could find out this season he's going to see less pitches. Mm-hmm. Teams are just not going to pitch to Miguel Cabrera. There's no reason to. I mean, last season you had like Prince Fielder behind him. You had to think twice. Yeah. This year you really don't have to think about it. I think I'd take my chances every single time with Victor Martinez. And I say in the pitching outside the big 3, there are some question marks. So for me, the keys for them to get back to where they need to is, one, like yourself, can they get that extra, not only the extra bat in there, but can the guys they've got step up? and be the guys that can support Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez. And the other thing is can their pitching outside of those big two, and some respects their big three, compete and be in games as much as possible? Because if not, then I think they're going to have a drop off. The only reason they're winning this division is because it is so bad.
All right, then let's move to Kansas City. No, of course we've got to give our predictions. We're giving our predictions. They're winning the division, right?
Yeah, they're winning the division.
Winning the division. But let's go to Kansas City because this is my darling team of the year. I love this Kansas City team. They bring in, I'm going to butcher this name now, and I apologize to Mr. Aoki. Norichika Aoki. I'm just going to call you Mr. Aoki from now on. Who can really steal bases. I worry about him how he's going to get on base, but once he is on base, he's a threat. Omar Infante they sign as well. They got Hosmer, Butler, obviously. They've got a great pitching rotation, in my opinion, because I love James Shields. I love Jason Vargas, who they just brought in. And then this young guy, Yordano Ventura, I mean, he's being talked about with some of the real young superstars coming through. People are in love with him. And then my favorite part of the Royals, that bullpen is so loaded. Everyone throws at the top end 90 mile an hour and has a really decent change-up pitch as well. And then there's just loads of them. Greg Holland, Wade Davis, Tim Collins. They just keep coming at you and coming at you and coming at you. And when you have that protection and you got nice pitching up front, you're going to win more games than you lose.
Yeah, these are good times for Kansas City. I mean, they haven't had much fun in over about the last 25 years or so. And I think this is a team that Kansas City fans are going to love to root for. Mm-hmm. They are, for me, almost like a bit of a Cinderella story. I think they will potentially make the playoffs. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do so, but I really hope for their sake that they do actually manage to make the playoffs, because I think they could be a very fun team to watch. With a lot of live arms in the bullpen. They've got, I say, the rotation, I think, has got, it's not a great rotation, but I think it's certainly very, very serviceable. And they've got a couple of guys that they can bring up from the farm system as well. I think at some point in the season we'll perhaps see a guy like Carl Zimmer come up and add to that particular rotation. I'm not entirely sure how Bruce Chen's still got a job in the major leagues. That's always a bit of a worry for me. I mean, I remember when I think he came up with Atlanta. He's been around a few of the teams now. So, but when you look at that lineup, I mean, is there a superstar there? Well, probably not, but Eric Hosmer is a guy that could very well be a superstar. I think he's going to be a very, very fun guy to watch this season, and Kansas City fans are really going to take to him in a very, very big way if they haven't already done so. And the other guy for me that I think is going to have a year that we're going to be talking about a guy at the end of the season about is Salvador Perez.
Yeah,
I think he is going to be very, very good. I mean, he's a part of some of these young catchers now that are coming through and can really hit. And this guy can really do that. I like the Infante pickup as well. I think that's a nice part of their infield just to settle things down a bit. So good times ahead for Kansas City.
Yeah, like I said, I really love this team. I think they're going to push the Tigers really hard. I just love everything about it. And I've got this is the first of the series. We haven't done this in a while. Stephen Jedi Ollie. I have this trade in mind. Okay, so you're going to have to bear with me as I formulate this trade for you. I'm going to dip into the minor leagues here, and I'm going to look at a couple of... There's a shortstop, and there's a third baseman. One's called Hunter Dozier, who, yes, was the 8th overall pick last year. That's a lot to give up, and I get that. Don't get me wrong. Then there is Boober Starling, another A-plus prospect, according to MLBDepthCharts.com. I say flip them, send them to the Chicago Cubs, give me Jeff Sarmaja. Maybe you stick Starling Castro in that deal because they've got Baez, and you give them something else as well. They just want young talent. I want to win now. Give me Jeff Sarmaja.
Do you know what? I don't see Kansas City making that deal.
Damn it.
The reason I don't see them making it is because I think they're really buying into a lot of this young system they're putting together and want to bring this team through. I don't think they really want to mortgage it at this stage because I don't think they're ready to compete. I don't see any reason for giving up prospects when you really aren't in a position to potentially make a run at going even to the ALCS. There are ways away yet. I think if you were sitting there thinking to yourself, right, okay, I'm one player away, then yeah, you make that deal. You really do try and get over the hump. But I think I'd want to bide my time this year with the Tigers, and think to myself, okay, if I can come second to the Tigers, potentially get into the playoffs, and then get my guys some playoff experience, then that's a good thing. I don't think I'd want to mortgage that just to try and bring in a guy that may or may not help me even get to the playoffs or even any further in the playoffs. So I wouldn't want to make that deal. I think you're giving up a hell of a lot of your future just to try and make that one deal at this stage, and you really want to see how those guys develop in the minor leagues.
All right, then, let's get to the keys to the season for the Kansas City Royals. This is mine, Stephen Edwards. Mike Moustauskas. The Moose is loose, ladies and gentlemen. We've been waiting for him. He came in as a big-name prospect. We've been waiting for him. I believe this can be his time. And if you have Alex Gordon, who was a great player for them last year, but struggled when he was leading off, which is what they asked him to do a lot of the time, they can move him down now. You got Salvador Perez, and then you've got to go to Moustauskas. I think that he's going to have a big-time year. I think that's going to be a huge deal for the Royals.
Yeah, I think he could have a very, very good year for them. And you can make a case about a lot of these guys that they're on the up. Mm-hmm. Whereas, you've already got guys on some of the other teams you're sitting there thinking, well, I really do hope they get back to that level. Whereas these guys are sitting there thinking, they haven't got to that ceiling yet. Mm-hmm. So they're hungry and they do want to win. And the whole outlook of the franchise is just changing now. I mean, they've got they're another team that have a very good defense as well. So again, they don't beat themselves. I love teams that don't beat themselves. Yeah. Give themselves a chance to win games, and I think that's something else that Kansas City do as well. So they really are on the right road now.
All right, I've got them finishing second in the division. They've moved towards the Tigers. The Tigers have come back to the park. And one thing I love about this team is I just look through it now, the roster, is that outside of Bruce Chen, who you mentioned, everyone is either playing at the peak of their powers, at the peak of their potential, or is young and going to develop into their potential, hopefully this year. That's a great position as a franchise to be in. That's exactly where they're at. I got them just like 2-3 games maybe behind the Tigers and coming second in this division.
Yeah, I've got them finishing second to the Tigers, but I haven't got them up that high. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to win 82, 83 games. I think they're going to be up over 500. But I still think they need to still have guys that take them to that next level. I don't think they're going to be. They could potentially be maybe 85, 86 games, but the problem they have is I don't think that's going to be enough to make the playoffs. I think that's where it's going to come down to. I think they could be very well in a dogfight maybe with Baltimore for that other wild card spot.
I completely agree with that. Okay, let's go to Minnesota and round this off. Byron Buxton, Miguel Sano. So that does it for this week's. No, I'm only joking. One thing we have to discuss when we look at the Minnesota Twins is something that you're very excited to discuss, is the fact that the Minnesota Twins spent some money this year, this offseason, on starting rotation. They signed Ricky Nolasco and Phil Hughes.
Yeah, and let's not forget Mike Pelfrey either. I actually think the Twins actually spent money on their All-Star festivities, because I think if they're going to spend money on anything, that's what they should have spent it on. Shouldn't have spent it on the guys they've actually brought in. I mean, Nolasco, Hughes, and Pelfrey. You could actually make a case on them three not even getting 30 wins between them. And actually, that's how bad it is. I mean, that for me is just throwing money at players.
And that is, by the way, Stephen, that's a 4-year deal for Nolasco, 3 years for Phil Hughes, and then 2 years for Pelfrey. So it's not like it's not like it was this 1 year. Here's a shot, come play for the Twins for a year, and then hopefully a bigger team gives you a contract. This is we're going to sign you because we think you can help us in the future. Miguel Sano and Byron Buxton right now are saying, how long left on our arbitration clocks? When can we get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, those two guys, once the arbitration ticks over, they're going to be hopefully up in the ball club. I mean, we're hearing rumours that maybe we'll see them in September, and then they'll be everyday players coming up at the start of next season. So the guys that are occupying their spots in the lineup at the moment literally are just occupying them. They're not part of the future. Those two guys are part of the future. I mean, the lineup is awful.
I know.
I mean, it really is so bad. I mean, Joe Mauer really needs to get out of Minnesota, and I know he's got that big contract. I think Minnesota would do well to actually try and get rid of him. I know it's a big thing for them to re-sign Joe Mauer as kind of like almost like a statement of intent, and they really had to with a new ballpark as well. They needed a face of the franchise for their new ballpark, so Joe Mauer had to be signed. But I mean, he's moved from behind the plate now, which I think is a good thing for him. But
I don't know, Stephen.
He's really not a great hitting first baseman.
I worry about that. Like, people just assume that, Mauer's a really good player, great hitter. Like, to just shift to first base full time is, I think it's going to be difficult, and more difficult than people are projecting. What interests me with Mauer, I thought he'd be a prime candidate in this Seattle offseason. I think he is available for the right price, and I know that they want to get balance in their lineup. Everyone's basically playing lefty. They've asked a couple of guys to play switch who don't because they're so lefty heavy. But they're the sort of team that could absorb that contract or maybe renegotiate it slightly, sell him on the fact that, we're in Seattle, we bring in Cano, we're going to make some moves for some big name free agents. They got guys like Taijuan Walker, the young pitchers, and they've got a lot of prospects in the minors people are raving about that they're readily available for because they're trying to make some moves to win now. It surprises me that Mauer hasn't been in more trade discussions because I think he would be willing to renegotiate that contract slightly to move to a decent team.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Mauer's not been shifted. I mean, for me, he went from being one of the better hitting catchers in Major League Baseball to being a good hitting first baseman. Mm-hmm. So really that contract now looks very, very overpriced. It definitely would have to be renegotiated, really speaking for anyone who's willing to take on that contract. But there are some teams that are willing to pay it. I mean, obviously the Yankees would be one. I mean, he would be a definite upgrade over to Scherer in New York. Seattle are throwing around loads of money. If they're a team that could eventually come in and try and get him. The Dodgers are another team that have got a load of money. They could come in and get him as well. So there are some destinations for him. But I think it comes back to being very difficult to try and get rid of him because, as I say, he is the face of the franchise in that new ballpark. Now, whether Minnesota thinks of the franchise, well, we had Mauer, we re-signed him as part of getting a new ballpark in place. Now we can maybe look to move him, is another matter. And it wouldn't surprise me if he did move at the deadline. They need to obviously get past the All-Star game first because I don't think they really want to deal Mauer before the All-Star game.
No, I agree with that, and they shouldn't worry about the face of the franchise thing because they got Miguel Angel and Byron Buxton coming in. They're going to do all sorts of ad campaigns on the two international players who are going to be launching bombs out there in Minnesota. I think they're going to be fine for face of the franchise. People are so excited for Sano and Mauer. And by the way, our friend who makes the documentaries for Ep2, the originals, who made Politera, which is obviously on Miguel Sano signing with the Twins, they're actually making a film right now for when he gets to the majors, and they get to film the first month of when he's in the majors, and the film comes out like a month later. So I am really excited to see that film and see what it's like in that organization for Miguel Angel Sano. And that's basically the story and key to their season, whatever you want to term it as, is just getting at bats for Sano and Buxton.
Yeah, I mean, Sano may not be seen at all till 2015, but I hope we maybe see him towards the end of the season, but who knows? It could be one of those teams they may decide to shelve him till 2015 and just maybe give Buxton a little bit of a dip in the major leagues as the season wears on. But yeah, I mean, they're the exciting things about Minnesota, and maybe that'll be the time they'll try and move Mauer maybe for some other prospects if a team is on the verge of the playoffs or in the playoffs already. I think Mauer's bat will be the big thing. I think they might have to hope that the Yankees are on the verge of the playoffs and then maybe try and swing Mauer over to the Yankees. But have the Yankees got what Minnesota would maybe want? Who knows? It's always a tricky one.
Yeah, I doubt that, but maybe they could figure something out. And shout out to Brian Dozier, who made the Size More Does Matters on my fantasy team. Big shout, Brian Dozier. Hope you have a good year batting in front of Joe Mauer. Stephen, they're finishing last in the AL Central. It's gonna be a rough season.
Yeah, it is going to be a rough season. Twins fans, hang tight. You've got a wonderful ballpark.
Just enjoy the
You've got the All-Star game being there as well. So that's the big things you've got to look forward to this season.
Just enjoy the view. Just enjoy being at the ballpark. They should let you in for free in Minnesota this year. Same thing with Houston. Just let them in. Who cares? Let him in. All right, Stephen, that does us for our AL Central preview. The next one up is obviously going to be the AL West. Go back and check out the AL East if you haven't already. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on US Sports Media. Make sure you check out the podcast for everyday first take topics. Stephen, this has been fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. It is a fun division, and look out for the Cinderella story that is the Royals.